Welcome to another installment of... No, seriously, what the f is happening in Darktide? Today, we're going to examine the other side of the unholy union that's sieging Tertium, the cult of Admonition. We'll look at what Admonition and Chaos cults are, what they have been doing in their siege of Tertium, and who the major characters are behind the cult. Obey my cat! Hit the subscribe button. The tale of Admonition hasn't been given to us in as much concrete detail as the Mobian Sixth, but there's arguably a lot more parts and pieces surrounding this faction for us to try and put together. We'll start with the most core concept. What is Admonition and how did they form? Admonition is a chaos cult that specifically worships Nurgle, the chaos god of disease and decay. In 40k lore, Nurgle is also often called the grandfather. Chaos cults themselves can range in the type of activities they typically participate in, from groups like sacrificial fight clubs to more politically focused groups to your standard grounded religious cults and everything in between. Admonition seems to be more of a religious-based movement, and they also seem to be one of the types of cults that was a little more open about their recruitment before the uprising. Now, if you're wondering why on earth anyone would join up with a cult that will eventually turn you into this, the answer is a lot more straightforward than you might think. Your general citizen of Tertium is one person in a hive city of over 9 billion people. The vast majority of those citizens live in conditions that's either living literally in sewage or crammed in a tiny box with 6+ other people just above the sewage. They work excruciatingly long hours, often performing physical labor under oppressive conditions and have nothing to show for it other than being told that they're doing their duty for the God Emperor. So when you have that perspective, it makes this recruitment scenario feel a lot more reasonable. Okay, so I sign up for the cult and I get a brand new family and a god that actually loves me and notices me. Great, perfect, I love all that. But I have to ask, and I'm really sorry if this is offensive, am I gonna end up looking like you?
I'm gonna be honest with you, mate. You probably end up looking worse.
Okay, you know what? It's not a deal breaker. I just wanted to ask to know what I was getting into. Heretics may be vile, disgusting little pus sacks, but they sure aren't lazy. Admonition's activities and corruption spread from the cistern quite possibly all the way to the tops of Tertium spires, and it can't be said that they lack ambition. With the support of not only the traitorous Mobian Sixth, but other factions as well, they quickly put a stranglehold on the hive city of Tertium. Transportation, vital infrastructure, commerce, you name it, Admonition has been there in Tertium using every available resource to shove some kind of disease into the population. Trains have been a focal point of the original infection since one was hijacked and used to spew toxic gas through populated stations as seen in the trailers and first cutscenes of Darktide. Fun fact, you can actually see that same train used in the attack in Chasm Terminus during the assassination mission toward the end of the level right here. And of course, the cultists have decided to not let a classic go to waste, which is what gave us the Rolling Steel mission, where Admonition uses another train to stage an attack on the newly arrived Mobian 53rd. Based on the contents we see on the train and that there's a bomb on board, we can pretty safely assume this was meant to be a dirty bomb used in a terrorist-style attack. Other points of infection and corruption have been tainting Tertium's water supply.
Somebody's poisoned the water hole!
By shoving a goddamn demon into the pipes. But this isn't just any standard demon, this is a mechanical demon, and mechanical demons are relatively uncommon and would necessitate someone with the know-how on how to construct them. The options on the table to consider if you're looking at what's grounded and established in 40k lore are maybe a cogitator or something similar became demonically possessed and grew out of control over a long amount of time, or it was intentionally constructed either by a warpsmith or a member of the Dark Mechanicum. I've covered the Dark Mechanicum and a lot of the reasons why they're likely to be involved somewhere in the happenings of Darktide, and a link to that video can be found in the description. Interestingly, Admonition also cooperated with the Water Cartel to some degree, as evidenced by in-game quotes in certain missions throughout the Torrent and Vigil station.
Ragtowns where the heretics really got their claws into the Water Cartel. It all went downhill from there.
And once Admonition had access to what they needed, tainting the water supply, they turned on the water cartel. This goes a long way to explain the piles of dead water cartel members we see in the Torrent. Other infrastructure the heretics have hit are production facilities vital to loyalist war efforts, such as Metal Fab 36, the smeltery. Leman Rust tanks can't flatten the heretics if there aren't any Leman Rust tanks left and the Imperium can't build new ones. And of course, Admonition got their hands into local commerce by way of the drug trade in the Carnival District. We finally got 100% confirmation the Blight was transmitted through tainted stims during the Unrelenting Hordes event, where members of the loyalist Mobian 21st Regiment had succumbed to infection. Soldiers turned groaners could clearly be heard muttering,
"Stims, make strong."
The mystery around the stims and Admonition's involvement with them goes a little deeper than just selling drugs to make money to fund their effort and infect more people with Nurgle's diseases. Rannick and Morrow note that the facility used to create the drugs predates the invasion.
I reckon this place has been running since before the invasion. It would seem that there is more rotten in Tertium than was immediately apparent.
And this is apparently important enough to warrant informing Grendel directly.
Conspiracy and heresy go hand in hand. Grendel will not be happy. But nor will Grendel be surprised.
When you're talking about the main disease that's sweeping through Tertium, the Walking Pox, physical infection vectors are only half of the problem. The Walking Pox is a warp-based disease, meaning it's essentially supernatural in nature.
I fear, therefore, the malady may have some component of the warp.
This means that people whose faith in the Emperor isn't strong enough can actually run the risk of being infected through sound and heretic propaganda by corrupting the victim's souls, which is something Admonition actually does. We hear it interrupt the original Wormwood Voxes.
Praise the darkness and the notch, a new beginning born of old fears.
And one mission in the Hourglass actually exists specifically to turn off this same heretical transmission. Spreading corruption to infect as many citizens as possible from mass numbers of groaners and poxwalkers isn't all Admonition has been up to. It would seem someone within the cult has been performing almost medical experiments, specifically in trying to force mutations in some of Admonition's soldiers. If you've never noticed, the Dreg Ragers, Mutants, and Chaos Spawns all have these containers of the classic Admonition green liquid somewhere on their persons. In each phase of growth, they change a bit in the quantity and location, but they're always present, and these are the only enemies like this. There's a pretty clear line from Rager to Chaos Spawn that follows from phase to phase in how dramatically mutated they are. There's also, of course, the obvious manifestations of two different demons, the Beast of Nurgle and the Daemonhost, that would need to be physically pulled from the warp into real space somehow. Enemies with forced mutations and actual demons are something we don't see on the Mobian side of the war at all. It's exclusive to Admonition. And that's where it becomes vital for us to take a look at the who's who behind this powerful Nurgle cult. I'm going to start with a character we actually haven't gotten a name for yet, and this one's probably going to feel like a curveball, but the Vox 12 entity that killed the original Wormwood is almost certainly involved with Admonition.
Her soul is mine now, and yours, Inquisitor Grendel, is next.
Whether this is a powerful sorcerer or perhaps even some kind of demon itself, it was acting as an agent of the cult hunting down Wormwood to put an end to her investigation, and is presumably still out there, somewhere.
Fox scatter is increasingly severe. I cannot confirm if my transmissions are getting through.
On the more mortal side, the head honcho of at least the religious portion of Admonition, if not the entire cult itself, seems to be a character that's been introduced as the mysterious cultist. It's tricky to talk about him and establish his place of authority within the cult because Vox Intercept 6 that really introduces him has been taken down by Fat Shark. I don't want to repost the video myself because apparently it was removed due to some kind of dispute, but what you need to know from the Lost Vox is that this mysterious cultist was present at Rinda Karnak's side after the Orthus offensive. He tells Rinda that his followers found her dead, or close to dead, after the rejects leave and brought her to him. It is he who also names Rinda the Herald of Admonition, so he must be in a position of authority over at the very least the religious aspects of the cult to be able to put the will of Nurgle into word and action by letting Rinda know her destined role within the cult. Now, the person who actually pulled Rinda back from the arms of death is a character we've heard mentioned a few times in Darktide by the name of Ermal. Ermal is the woman who performed the surgery that saved Rinda, either saving her from the brink of death or reviving her from death. I'm honestly a little unclear on exactly which. Regardless, we know Ermal is important within Admonition because in the Have Draco mission, Wolfer says,
sacred grounds wherever followers. I want it protected.
She has some amount of followers under her, and we also know that at least part of her role in the cult is medical and experimentation based. She is almost certainly the woman behind their roided out ragers that eventually grow out of control from mutants into full-blown chaos spawns. You've probably noticed that two of the three characters I've already listed here, the mysterious cultist and Ermal, are related to, or they themselves focus on Rinda Karnak, and that's probably not by accident. Rinda has become something of a linchpin in Darktide's story, pushing the narrative to shift focus as her role in the story evolves. Like I said at the start of the video, Admonition is more difficult to talk about in terms of concrete facts and a linear story. So far in Darktide, most of the focus for our antagonists and background information has been squarely on Wolfer and the Mobian Six. The Dregs in Admonition have definitely been present, we just went over all the ways they're wreaking havoc across Tertium, but they've mostly been players in the shadows as far as what we as an audience have been getting informed about. But now we're starting to see that focus shift, and this transition actually has everything to do with Rinda Karnak's character arc and her coming into her role as the Herald of Admonition. Let's rewind a little bit to the Traitor Curse, which is where we were first introduced to the Karnak twins. The twins are established to be part of Wolfer's regiment in the Mobian Six, and they're incredibly tough and ruthless warriors.
Two of Wolfer's lieutenants, the Karnak twins, are leading operations in Abzone HL 7004.
Weaklings! You wouldn't last a day in the Sixth!
But Roden and Rinda, especially Rinda, are a bit different from Wolfer when it comes to how they present themselves as followers of Nurgle. Even though Wolfer has apparently pledged himself to Nurgle's service and supporting the Cult of Admonition, his character is still very much a military man. We never really hear voice lines from him about his beliefs or the more religious side of his heretical choices. The closest we ever get is him referencing his new truth that he's bringing to the people of Tertium to set them free.
It is our solemn pledge to bring about a new and glorious age of freedom and prosperity.
Rinda is different. She and Roden consistently reference feeding rejects to the cauldron.
Run out of convicts to send to their deaths! There's still room in the cauldron if you're feeling lonely!
And this is referencing the Great Cauldron of Nurgle. The cauldron is the vessel in which Nurgle creates all of his horrible diseases, and was used during the Plague Wars to spread disease and devastate planets across Ultramar. To keep the potent diseases flowing, the cauldron must consistently be filled with a large amount of rotting materials, which is why enemies of the Grandfather are fed to the cauldron. The Karnak twins seem to take more interest in the role of serving Nurgle directly, rather than just participating in military engagements, and in turn Nurgle has seen their efforts and taken a particular interest in Rinda. After we fight the twins in the Orthus offensive, Rinda is saved from death and wakes up in the care of the head of the Cult of Admonition. I'm going to read some of the most important lines from the transcript of that removed Vox Intercept 6. Ermal says that she's never seen a physiology quite like yours. A biological aberration, that's what she calls you. But we both know the truth, don't we? The Grandfather has chosen you. You are to become something remarkable. Of course, Ermal insisted on adding a little something of her own to the mix. That woman does love to tinker. I'm told it will be some time before her little gifts ripen within you. But the Grandfather rewards patience. You are one of us now. We will love you like a sister, and you will be the Herald of Admonition. all that you desire will be yours for the taking. Alright, so there's a bit to unpack here. Upon examining Rinda for her surgery, Ermal calls her a biological aberration, but the mysterious cultist says, we both know the truth about that. What the hell does that mean? While again, we can't be 100% certain because it isn't just spelled out for us, this really seems to imply that Rinda has probably been slowly mutating for a while. I would guess probably since Nox Alpha, when she began to seem extra resistant to the diseases all the other soldiers were dying from.
Where's the justice? Hundreds dead to Knoxville, and Rinda Karnak still standing. Blessed throne.
The process of physical mutation has probably been accelerated due to Ermal's surgical intervention, and also whatever custom work Ermal decided to add along with saving Rinda's life. So what does this amount to? What is the Herald of Admonition? There is something that already exists in 40k lore called the Herald of Nurgle. This is an empowered plague bearer known as a poxbringer, and most often the Herald of Nurgle was a mortal whose resistance to the grandfather's diseases and their deeds in service of chaotic will have pleased Nurgle so much that he blesses that individual mortal and elevates them to demonhood. This matches with what we hear the mysterious cultist tell Rinda about her coming transition into the Herald of Admonition perfectly. They both know the truth about her biological aberration. The grandfather has chosen her. If you played the Terror in the Dark event Fat Shark ran for Darktide back in August of 2024, you'll know that it was revealed to us in game that Rinda isn't actually dead. She appeared once again to fight our rejects as a test of strength for herself to see if she's ready. It was a big disappointment across the community, myself included, that Rinda appeared as her exact same model with her exact same weaponry and attack kit. But it is worth noting a couple things. The first is that a Herald of Nurgle frequently uses a weapon called a Bale Sword, making Rinda's sword an already appropriate weapon for the future of what she may become. Rinda is also covered literally head to toe in robes, chainmails, gloves, and a helmet. We see exactly 0 of her features. This very well may be by design on her part to help hide the physical mutations she started experiencing, especially since we know in the past other members of the Mobian Six were likely able to see her face.
I don't like the way Rinda Karnak looks at me. Not one bit.
So even though she may have looked like her basic self during the Terror in the Dark, a demonic version of Rinda is not off the table. In fact, that lost Vox Intercept 6 more or less confirms that she is changing. And as Rinda physically transforms into a new horror that will terrorize the warband, she transitions from a simple soldier of the Mobian Six to almost a sort of religious figurehead. Her character has been strongly present during the fall of the Mobian Six on Nox Alpha and continuing into the events of Darktide, giving us a touchstone and insight into that traitor company. Now Rinda acts as a bridge to cover the gap that has existed for us as an audience, bringing us into the inner workings of Admonition, introducing us to the mysterious cultist, bringing us a step closer to knowing who or what Ermal is, and demonstrating the strength of Admonition's faith in Nurgle. Hopefully Fat Shark will continue to expand Darktide's story in this direction, and sooner rather than later we'll come to discover the ultimate goals of what this powerful chaos cult hopes to achieve, helping clear up the question of, no, seriously, what the fuck is happening in Darktide? Thanks so much for watching, and thank you to Nightfall for telling me where to find the transcript for Vox Intercept 6 on the wiki. Also a huge thank you to Leah S over on Patreon, and Rue on Top and Comadre for being YouTube channel members, helping make this video possible.